Well, here we are back. A little bit of a blast from the past here. Worked with Kayley many years ago, back when Dorothy was coming to help me with weddings. We were down was it the Embassy Suites? One of them down in Portland. New Year's Eve wedding was a lot of fun, and then we've stayed in contact. I know you've been nice and try to send me wedding contacts and stuff over the years. We have Kayley Hoddick here with Hoddick Photography. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to do this. It's been on my sort of long to-do list for a very long time, and I've had some other friends do it. So I'm very excited to finally pull the trigger and be a part of it.
Yeah, we're getting back on this. We're rolling through. I think I've, 4 or 5, 6 of these in the last couple of weeks. So it's good. And, it's better like trying to do this in April versus, middle of July or whatever is always easy. So I'll pull up your website here. We'll get into more about you and everything. But just, I always ask people kind of what is your elevator pitch or what is Hoddick Photography all about?
Yeah, so I'm Kayley. I've been in business since 2008, full-time for photography. So I think that is a little unique, just having a lot of experience. But I really try to create images with my couples, not just take them. So that's something I think also a little different that I do. And I really value the connection with my couples because everybody is so different and not everybody wants the same sort of images. So one thing unique is I offer a completely free engagement session before they even book. So it's kind of crazy. And a lot of my colleagues think I'm nuts. I've been doing it for like 15 years and it's sort of the best marketing I could ever do. And also, I really also want to make sure that I love my couples as well. So it's sort of a great tryout for both of us to see if it's a good fit together before we're locked into a contract or anything like that.
Well, I actually like that idea a lot. I mean, to me, I always feel like I'm on the back end. I'm always on the lesser end, not getting to get that time ahead of time with the couples, right? Whether it's however you do the engagement session, but then I always show up and like they've already got all these inside jokes and everything, and I'm like, oh, so I like that. I think that that's good, and I totally agree because one of the things that I think is undervalued is the relationship between the photographer and couple. People look at the photos, but it's like it's such a personality thing as well.
Totally. I don't like require it. I just really encourage it. And I feel myself that I do a better job on the weddings, that I have a deeper relationship, because so many things are different, and your stories are different. And how can I possibly capture that authentically if I don't know anything about you? So I think just knowing what's important to couples, knowing their story, knowing their family dynamics, all of that can be really beneficial. Doesn't mean I can't do it without it, but I just feel that I excel further when I know what's important to them. Because ultimately I have my own style, but ultimately I'm working for someone else. And often just kind of knowing those, nuances about people's past can really be helpful. And also I use the engagement session as sort of a feedback opportunity for couples. Like I encourage them, tell me what you don't like so that I can then not do that on your wedding day. And everybody is so different. Like art is subjective. And some people love silly candids where they're goofing and laughing, and other couples hate that. And they want, more refined imagery. So again, everybody's different. And so sort of doing that free photo shoot is a really amazing opportunity also to see if I want to work with them. I only typically take on max 25 wedding couples a year. And, so I want to really make sure that those couples connect with me as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's good getting that feedback, and it can be, poses people feel more comfortable with, or if they don't, right? Maybe say, oh, I don't like. It was funny. We had the wedding. I think it was like 2 weeks ago. I always just like, oh, whisper in her ear, kind of make her laugh, and she's like, you actually really don't like this, but I'm like, well, you look very nice in it, but I think it's good to get that because I remember like on our wedding day, and our photographer was great, and we had great images, but we did a whole set. We were at a place that like we didn't like aesthetically, and it wasn't what we would never say anything, and we're just kind of rolling through it. But afterward, Dorothy and I were both like, yeah, we're never going to use any of those. But so it's good, it's good to kind of set those ahead of time of what they're looking for and what they like and don't like.
Yeah, like last year, I had a couple who really just loved portraits, just traditional looking at the camera portraits. And I absolutely do that. I really kind of pride myself on having a variety of imagery, wide close-ups, different emotions throughout the day. But some people just know what they love and that's what they want, you know, and I'm typically not going to do 100 pose looking at the camera photos. So for that couple, that was very important to them. So then I knew going into their wedding to focus and highlight more on those sorts of images. So it can be really helpful. I also think it's amazing because I think a lot of couples don't always consider that photography or the service you're getting isn't the be all like end all of your experience. So it's like you could have the best $10,000 photographer, but if they get a flat tire on the way to your wedding, it doesn't matter how good of a photographer they are because they're not going to be there. So I really kind of pride myself on educating my couples and also showing them sort of that experience before they book, because you don't know, like, is somebody going to respond to your emails in time? Do they answer the phone? Are they on time? What do they wear? You know, what's their mood when they arrive on set, sort of. And so I think often that's a part of the service industry that couples often kind of don't think about or negate. And I just know, I've never been married, but I can't imagine trying to hire all these people and not really know anything about them. You know, like you have to give somebody $2,000 and you have no idea like what they're going to show up wearing. I mean, maybe you meet them at a consult, but other than that, you really don't know besides reviews or something.
No, it's wild. I mean, we don't, you know, with videography, we don't always book like tremendously far out, right? Like a photographer or a planner would, but you know, we have ours where we go into next year. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I can't, you know, I can't imagine like, here's the money, see you in 18 months. And you're
Right?
like, okay, like it's just a huge, and I always think us, I was still a very new wedding vendor, but at least having done it a couple seasons and having enough people that I kind of knew like, okay, I know a photographer personally, I know a planner personally, I know our photo booth, you know, like all of these things to be able to do it, because I don't know. And I really tell couples that, like even today, I don't know how you trust that. And it's a huge leap of faith.
Totally. And you can look at reviews, you know, but ultimately that isn't your experience. And so it's like, I think all of that is so important, sort of the behind the scenes. Like, are they a professional? Do they have insurance? Do they have a backup plan? So I really try to, number one, educate, but also just be super prepared. And I'm very open that I tell people, like, I have had 15 years of mistakes more, you know what I mean? Not saying like I make a mistake for 15 years straight, but I have had a lot of time to sort of hone in my business practices to ensure or prepare so that, you know, I won't make those mistakes again in the future. And I think that that is being a professional. So I really like to kind of give that preview experience to people. It's a totally free session. Now I'm currently offering 45 minutes at a location of their choice within reason in the Portland area. I also do it in Salem because I advertise down there. And so I am trying to start advertising more in Seattle, and I'd be open to, you know, maybe going up there for a date or whatever and offering that for people up there. But I just think it's great to see, you know, what is it like actually, like how quick are the images returned? How is the editing? Like there's just so much more to it that people don't realize, and they can't get that experience just from a website necessarily. And I do have, I'd say maybe 1 out of 30 people don't end up booking me. And I'm often really thankful, and I'll even turn down, rarely, but once in a while, I turn down people and just say, I don't think we're a good fit. And that's sort of my main goal, is just like educating people. Even if I'm not their best choice, I want to help them find that for them.
Yeah, I think that there's a weird, and you know, I think the whole like ghosting has gotten a lot more prevalent here in the last few years, or, like with inquiries. Not like, no, I mean, people like your vendors are professional, and like if you want to go with someone else or it's not a great fit, like it's absolutely okay to let you know. And it's the same. You go back and forth. I had a consult. They were super excited. We met. It was very clear that the mother was looking for kind of different, just than what I did, and that was great. They wanted something that was like super long form, and I'm like, I mean, we can, you know, you can talk about anything, but that's not, I want you to be happy. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, you know, if it's not, you know, the right fit for that. Having done this for so long, right, is a testament, right? I think to just kind of, you know, you and the work and everything you put in. What do you attribute that to? Because that's, you know, I feel like I've been in this a long time, and you're eclipsing even me. So what do you attribute to just the longevity of your, you know, business?
Oh, that's a really great question.
Loaded question.
And I felt really thankful because I've read stats that like the average business doesn't last like 3 years or something like that. I don't know weddings specifically. I do come from my mom's whole side of the family are artists. So I do feel very thankful that I was sort of grown up in an environment where participating in art was encouraged, and I wasn't really like shunned from that. But I think just like tenacity and hard work and just sort of being like, I don't want another job. So I'm going to figure out, how to make this work. And I did take a corporate job was the first time. So I started my business in 2008, right out of college. And I did take a corporate full-time job for 2 years during COVID. That sort of fell in my lap. I did not seek it out. I was referred to it. And it was a photography job, but it was for an HVAC company. So I was doing, it was kind of cool. I was doing 360 photography. So like
Oh,
I've
yeah.
seen that online where like if you have a shoe, you can move the screen and see all around it. And so I was doing that for like AC units and fan belts and motors and batteries and weird stuff. But I think that also sort of was a good reality check of like, I could do something else, but I'm really passionate about weddings. And during those 2 years, I still had at least 10 weddings, both of those years, if not 15. So I was still doing my business, but it just wasn't full time. And I think that was sort of the kick in the pants. I needed to be like, no, this is what I'm really passionate about. And I am so thankful to be working for myself in so many ways. It's definitely very difficult, but I guess I don't know why I've lasted so long. I think just great education, tenacity, commitment to continuing education and being a good person, I guess.
That's good. Well, no, but it's also that wake up call like, "Oh, I really like working for myself. I don't like," I mean, that's the whole adage, you'd rather work 80 hours a week for yourself than 40 hours for someone else, and feeling like you have that control of that. And, like you said, choice of clients and choice of events and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of intangibilities that go into kind of running your own business and being able to make your schedule.
I will say I was really excited to be able to clock out. And that was
Yeah.
sort of like the one thing that I was like, this is going to be awesome. But like the problem is that I still had my business. So I wasn't really clocking out. Like I was clocking out to another job. So, but I will say that was maybe like the one nice thing was to leave it all. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that about being self-employed is that you constantly have things on your shoulder, whether it's a specific job to finish or just marketing or insurance or taxes, bookkeeping. Like there's just I'm never done ever.
You talked about growing up kind of, in art and all of that. Were you always interested in photography? I'm always curious, like, how did people wind up with a camera in their hands?
Yeah. So, like I said, my mom is predominantly like a fiber artist. She was a costume designer, and her mother was a ceramicist and comes from a long line of that. So, I was really encouraged, but my father's side of the family are not artists at all. So, that was really interesting to see that dynamic. But like through schooling, I was always dancing. I played the flute growing up, and I did start photography in high school. Like most people, I was on newspaper and yearbook, doing black and white imagery. And that was really great. I don't think at that time that I thought it would turn into this. But when I graduated and started looking at colleges, I was looking for schools that had flute, dance, and photo. So that was kind of challenging, but I found a really great school called Pitzer College in California. It's part of this consortium of schools called the Claremont Colleges. And it was just a great place because I got to explore all of those things. And I actually was hired as the darkroom TA before I even got into the school. So I guess I must have been passionate about it because I had enough gumption to like
Yeah.
go like tour a college in another state and like interview for a job at the same time. So I was for 4 years the darkroom lab manager and basically a teaching assistant for that. And that was great. And I think definitely college made me realize like this is what I want to do. My thesis was in a photo project. And I will say though that I got a ton of like fine art education. So I got a lot of composition, color, balance, tone, that kind of formalities, which I think a lot of people are missing these days, being self-taught. Not to say you can't be a great self-taught person, but I think having those fundamentals were really great. And then trying to make this story short, right out of college, I really just wanted to stay in California, if I'm honest, and not move back to Portland, which is where I'm from originally. But I found, like, I think on Craigslist, a job with a company called Lauren Studios. They still exist, and they did high school and college graduation, like yearbook photos, but specifically cap and gown for all the UC schools. So I actually had a great education there my first year out of school, where I would photograph like 50 people a day. And so that was great because I learned how to be quick and efficient. I learned how to deal with so many different personalities, all kinds of people, all kinds of needs, and kind of see how a professional studio works. But looking back on it, I was only paid $10 an hour, which is crazy. This was like in 2008. And one of my coworkers was doing weddings on the weekends. And she sort of said to me, like, casually, like, oh, I'm shooting a wedding for like $200 on Saturday. And I was like, at that time, I was like, oh my gosh, $200, like that seemed amazing to me. It was over double what I was getting paid, you know? And so I went and tried out, and I'd only been to one wedding my whole life. So I really had no idea what I was getting into, but the guy really liked me, and I basically shot 2 or 3 weddings with him, and kind of tried out for free. And then he hired me. So I still did the school of photography. Like I would go to like UC Berkeley and stay there for a month and just shoot like 50 to 100 cap and gown photos all day, 8 hours every day for like a month. And so then I was doing weddings every Saturday. And after maybe 4 or 5 months, the owner of that company, it was called Cantina Light Pictures. They, his name was Sam, and he was like, I think you're really chatty and outgoing. Do you want to try sales? And it like never even had occurred to me. And so I was just like, sure. And I decided to quit the school photography job, and I went for Cantina Light Pictures full time. I was on commission solely, which I think is illegal.
Yeah.
But being like, 22, I was just excited. I was like eating it all up. And so I worked with him and I did sales. And my first year I booked like 65 weddings, which is just crazy to think about. And I would shoot them if I was available, or we had a team of like 5 photographers that I could like relay them to if I wasn't available. And then unfortunately that business went out of business within like a year and a half of me being there. And
That's probably because of illegal sales practice.
Yeah, but it was also sort of like shocking because I was like, here's this man, Sam Legospie, like he taught me a lot. I will say that, like, shout out to Sam if you're listening. I mean, he taught me like how to shoot off-camera flash, how to just approach a wedding, how to do a bridal show. Like I do think I got a great education just like being kind of in the thick of it, but not having it be on my risk, if that makes sense. Like it was someone else's business. But at the end, he basically fired everybody but me and him, and actually offered to sell me the business. And it was kind of traumatic because I had all these clients that I had booked that I knew weren't going to get fulfilled because he was going out of business. And so I sort of felt like it was my responsibility, even though it was not my whatever. So that ultimately ended. And I sort of was like, I can do this myself and I can do it better. And I can kind of make all the changes that I saw that were lacking here. But I also knew that I was scared that if this person that had booked 80 weddings in a year couldn't do it, like, why would I be able to? So my mom, being an educator, found actually a photo school in Massachusetts called Hallmark Institute of Photography. It has sadly closed, and it's my like favorite thing ever. And I wish it still existed because I would probably teach there if I could. But it was a really unique program where it was just 10 months, 8 hours a day with 100 students. So it was hard to get into, and it was very, very focused. I had always wanted to go to like the Academy of Art or something like that when I was younger. And my parents really wanted me to go to a liberal arts school to get the full education. So I sort of think it's funny because I did that, but then like 5 years later, I left. So, but the Hallmark school was great. I had professors, one Gregory Heisler, he has photographed like 80 Time magazine covers. He's photographed presidents, you know, just Oprah, like all of these things. And I was working like one-on-one with him every day for 10 months. And I totally geeked out. I was like in the front row, raising my hand all the time. We had tons of guest speakers. I got to, what was really great about it is that they focused on like creating a business, which I haven't seen in any other photo schools that I've looked at. So like we had lawyers look at our contracts. We had graphic artists help us with our logos, just so many things. And we also did every aspect of photography, from food photography to, you know, like I got to go do an internship briefly with the guy who does all the Coors advertising for like Coors Brewery.
Oh, yeah.
In Colorado, and I like got to go hang out with him. And then I saw wedding photographers that I got to go spend the day with and see what they do. And then we even had like a plane aerial class where we got up in a plane and learned like how they make maps and things like that. So it was just really great because it exposed me to like all the different aspects that I could aim for photography. And that's why I also love weddings, because they kind of encompass all of that. You know, I'm a still life photographer. I'm a photojournalist. I'm a poser. I'm a portrait. I'm family. I'm kids. I'm everything, literally. But so that education was really amazing. And I finished valedictorian actually. And I didn't even like know until graduation when they gave me my award. And it was awesome. But I just like geeked out and just had such a great time. So I really highly encourage education. I'm still like a big, you know, force for that. Even like I went this year to WPPI, is a big photo conference in Vegas that they have every year for wedding and portrait photographers. So I really try to continue that myself, even if it's not like formal school. You know, I think you can still be really educated otherwise. But after that long, I know this is a big tangent.
You're good.
After that, in 2012 is when I graduated from that program, and I decided, hey, like I'm going to just go back to weddings. I actually got like an interview with Apple after that for their advertising, and I decided not to do it, which looking back, I'm like, why didn't I do that? But I just decided I wanted to be closer to my family. And so I came back to Portland and kind of rebranded my business in Portland, and now do about 20, 25 weddings a year. And that's definitely my specialty, but I do other things as well, for sure.
Well, it's interesting, and it's funny that you talk about you being the valedictorian, because it's, you know, you finally found like what your passion is, right? And I remember like I couldn't stand school, and then like the second I'm like, oh, like you know, and then I was like in the broadcasting studio all the time, and you know, you couldn't get me, because you know, that's kind of the point of education in college, or however you go about, you know, that sort of education is finding what you're really passionate about. But I also totally agree with you of working in like, even just me interning in like another production company in college and like seeing, okay, what do I like? What do I not like? Right. Like they had their studio set up. You know, you go in, clock in and clock out every day. And I hated that because I felt like you were still going to work, where it's something about working from home. You don't feel like, right. And I understand like the work-life separation and all that, but I've always, this is how I thrive versus like, okay, well now I'm going to go commute in and do that, sit around all day waiting, you know, kind of tinkering and setting stuff up. So it's good. You're able to see the things that you enjoy and the things you don't. And especially, you know, I think also in your case, like that responsibility, right, of booking and seeing how all that came, right, how all that could come tumbling down with that company and having all these weddings booked, you know, you're certainly going to carry that in now of having the integrity and everything in your own business. You know, there, even through kind of all of that misfortune, right, you gain a lot of positive knowledge and totally traits you want to incorporate that way.
Totally. I still use part of his contract today, which cracks me up, you know, and like he absolutely taught me a lot, but also seeing just like someone so successful that could fall down, you know, but he was also doing a lot of shady stuff. He was like paying for previous albums with new bookings, you know, that kind of thing. And so like it was a great lesson to sort of learn on someone else's risk. Because I definitely like no hate on him overall. Like I learned so much from him, but I definitely also learned like what not to do. For sure. And that's why I love that school, is because it really, like my undergrad, I have a bachelor's in fine art, and like I learned nothing about being a business. And this photo school was so amazing because that's why my mom really kind of honed in on it for me, was because, you know, Brooks and like the Art Institute, maybe the Art Institute a little bit, but like Brooks at that time was not, and I think Brooks closed, but they were not talking at all about how to run a business, how to make money, and how to do all of that. So
Well, and also even just kind of the practical things. Like I know, even we have an art school here in Seattle, but even like when I was in news, and we'd have these people that went to these highfalutin whatevers, and they come in and they would know all the theory and everything, but nothing of like, okay, that's great, but you know, you're
yeah,
gonna get called out at 1 in the morning to go shoot a motorcycle accident in pitch black. Like your theory kind of goes out the window, right? Like I remember the first, like literally the first night, like, which was totally I don't know how you know how smart that was, but my first day of the, you know, this was back in whenever it was 2010. My first night, here, go take a camera home. Like, okay, I've never done. And then, you know, 1 in the morning, here, there's a, you know, there's a fatal motorcycle accident. Go for it. Like,
man.
but anyway, but the point is like learning that stuff on site, or you know, or learning it in school. Some of these art schools and stuff, it just doesn't translate that way, because you can do everything in the book, but then when you're on site of the wedding and you have 10 minutes to do a lay flat, get the details ready before you got to go get the bride dressed, like it doesn't matter. You can have 10,000 hours worth of theory, but you need to be able to do it.
Absolutely. And same kind of with like online learning. I feel like it's one thing to have like a critique in person with a super famous, technically trained photographer and have him give feedback rather than just like taking or watching a YouTube. Like that's two different things too. So, but I recognize that not everybody has those privileges. And I think you can still be a great photographer self-taught. I just think for me, that formal education really helped hone my skills and, kind of catapult me into what I'm doing today, for sure.
Or if you are self-taught, I think interning with someone, working alongside
Yeah,
someone, but to get just to see, because you see this all the time with like DJs, and I mean, it could be any kind of vendor type, but like, how to present yourself, how to show up, how to do all this stuff where, and not everyone knows that. I mean, if you've never been to a wedding, you never worked out, you've never been to a corporate. I mean, I remember now I have my carts and I have all my equipment and everything. And I'm like, I think like when I started out, like I would just would hand carry stuff in, I'm sure just looking like a madman wandering around the streets of Seattle. And like, it's helpful going through these processes with somebody, even if you're, because like I said, yeah, like you said too, not everyone can afford or have the opportunities to go do all that stuff, but learning kind of with someone, even if it's just shadowing for a little bit, I think is super valuable.
totally. And I feel like there's also lesser ways to do it. Like I know when I moved back to Portland in 2012, I worked with like 4 different photographers for free just to second shoot for them, just to get an idea. I'd already shot like 200 weddings probably at that time, but still just to be, ingrained in a new environment, like maybe things were different here. And I think always it's valuable to learn from other people. And that's also what I want to make sure is clear, that I don't think just like going to school and you're done. I think it's a constant thing, which is why I still participate in continuing education, like the WPPI conference. I learned so much there. And that was just at the beginning of the month, or even things Creative Live. There's a little shout out for that. I have had a lot of luck with, and like those courses are free when they air, or like $99, so I think there's just a lot of opportunities these days that there necessarily weren't 15 years ago with like being self-taught online, for sure.
And even like I haven't done it in a couple years, like the wedding MBA down in Vegas. I know WPPI is there as well. That the idea of running it like a business, and I see this so much, especially videographers, I think are the worst in this way of like, oh, like this is my art and this is my craft. And like, like we've always given away the raw footage or, added it on the packages. And I've always, oh, whatever you want. And, as long as my portfolio is what you're looking for, right? We can, obviously I'm not going to do something outside of my realm, but you get these weird, and it's like, no, go learn like how to run your, we are a service business, right? We're not necessarily an art business. And I think that that's a delineation as well, that at least in my experience, a lot of videographers have a hard time with.
Totally. And I definitely recognize that I have my own preferences for art. I really love drama and creative and dark lighting, or, dramatic lighting. And not all of my clients love that. ideally my clients do love that, but not always. And so I do definitely recognize that I'm not ultimately here to photograph your wedding for me. It's for you. So I can alter, and that also kind of goes back to that free engagement session, is like learning, what do these people like? What is their artistic lens and what inspires them? And what do they want on their wall? Because not everybody likes that dramatic photo back there. And there really isn't a right or wrong either. So
it was very, I mean, and I don't even know what year this was in the business, but it was very freeing for me, feeling like I wasn't shooting for my portfolio anymore. I was just able to shoot for the couple that, like, I had enough, my stuff and referrals and connections and everything that, like, it really freed me just going into every wedding, like whatever they need, whatever they want. Like, I have no, in my head, I need to do these 1,800 things that it's whatever they need to get that captured. But that was freeing, not feeling like I was having to, I have to make sure I get all this stuff so I can book, another year off of that. Right.
That's super awesome. I definitely don't feel that pressure, but I do feel sad sometimes if I have a really beautiful wedding and I don't get enough time or what I want. But I think it's definitely a balance always with dealing with your couple's needs and, whatever, or even what they told you before the wedding versus the day of. I watched some of your other podcasts and you talked a lot about that, sort of that fine line of like pushing them to go out at sunset or like recognizing that they're done, and so I usually like push twice is kind of my rule. Like, hey, I think you might appreciate this in a year when you look back on it. And I say that twice. And if they're like not having it, I feel like I'm pretty good at like reading the room and letting it go then,
It's such a tough balance. And I always defer to the photographer, but yeah, you're like, I don't, or it's like, man, I'm really hot here. I'm really like, we had a wedding a couple, and I told the photographer, I said, you were right in doing this, because her feet were, it's one of those, we have our sore feet here. We're at the end of the ceremony, but I'm like, this is this time of year, right? It was in March. So, you don't have sunset until, 9 o'clock. I go, you were absolutely right pushing that for those last 5, because we needed to get those family photos, because otherwise we're not, like there is a limit there of like, sometimes you do need to be mom and dad and say, no, we're going to buck through this, versus like, do you need those extra, 17 portrait shots or whatever? It's a tough balance.
Totally. And I think a lot of that goes back to that communication with that couple, and sort of curating their experience too. So I really kind of pride myself as well on being really communicative. I do, though, have couples that, like you said, they book me 18 months out and I maybe talk to them one time and that's fine. Like, if that's who you are, that's great. And I can still show up and do my best there. But I definitely feel and can recognize that the couples who I know more intimately, I feel like I just do a better job serving them. I mean, it makes sense if I know your needs, that I can therefore provide for them better. And so I'm really thorough with like planning. I usually have a kind of pre-wedding consult, even like 4 months out or something, because a lot of times that call provides information or ideas to the couple that they never even thought about. And so often I do unfortunately see that I'd say a majority of my clients do not have day of or regular planners. And I sort of become that. And I've had planners tell me to stop saying that. But I kind of feel like I become the planner. And that is semi-selfish, but also not, because I want to make sure that we have enough time to get what they need. But it also allows me to make sure that, but I know, like, I had a wedding on Saturday and we were like 2 hours behind, and we missed the whole first look, didn't even do it. And so that's okay. And I can definitely spring into action and make that happen and, do things really quickly after if necessary. But I think it's still great to have a plan and also just know, like, hey, I know that this was important to that bride, so I'm going to push her later in the evening because I know that was important to her. So I might ask her twice rather than once, even though she's tired or whatever, because I just know she said that was important.
Well, and also I think not all day of coordinators are equal, right? I think that the wedding that we just had, this person officiated the wedding and it was the planner, but it was really just, I have your wedding. Because they weren't the officiant, right? But they were officiating, but they were like, okay, we're gonna get you through the actual wedding ceremony, and that's all I'm really concerned about, right? Because the venue is doing like tables and chairs and all that stuff, but it's like, no, because then we're running around and like you need the plan. You're like, okay, you need to get in your dress now. You need to get all this because we're running and the guys are getting ready and the girls are getting ready. And the guys are setting up, and you're like, you need someone. And so I do think sometimes couples are like, oh, I have a day of coordinator. That's a day. It's like no, because there's varying levels there. And all obviously planning all the way up, but you need someone that's taking that agency versus like, well, I'm just going to be downstairs whenever the ceremony is deciding to start. Like that is not the same.
Yeah, and I'm definitely a go-getter. Like I've seen some people on your podcast say they're more fly on the wall. I definitely like to say I'm enhanced photojournalism is sort of the word I say. Because I think a lot of couples from blogs or whatever think they want a photojournalist or a documentary photographer, but they don't realize a true photojournalist, if you had spinach in your teeth, is not supposed to tell you. Does not move a trash can from behind your background, like doesn't put you in better light, doesn't fluff your dress. Like a true photojournalist does not touch anything in the image. And I think people don't know that or don't, correctly understand the term. And so I say I'm enhanced. So I will make sure your background looks great. You're in the best lighting, or I'm bringing the lighting. Your hair is nice, you look good, but then I like to stand back and capture an authentic connection or interaction. So that's kind of how I do it is I put you in the best situation and then I step back and then I'm the photojournalist. But I also I do pose. A lot of photographers don't. I do, but I try not to make it very like stiff or anything. And I always tell people, I'm like, you're not like, I'm like, you can move, you can be fluid with it. And I try to give action. So it's not always, this one is, or I'm backwards. This one is pretty posy, but it's not always like that. I might say, like whisper something naughty in his ear, or like whatever. I want a connection. I want that interaction with them, or I often bring up their past, like tell me about your first kiss, but look at your partner when you're telling me. And that always creates such great movement and emotion. So I definitely do pose, but I like to still capture that authenticity. And again, it's like, how can I do that if I don't know that couple or what's important to them? And also like with the timeline stuff, it's like some people, their aunt might be someone they saw one time a year their whole life. Whereas other people are like, my aunt is like my mother. So it's like, I can't make those decisions. So I try to just educate my couples and say like, this is what I would do, or this is what I've seen typically, but do you have a unique situation? Or is there something more important? Like some people are like, they're having dry weddings and no dancing. And then other people's, the dance floor is like their main priority, So it's just, everybody's different for sure.
Well, and I just, speaking of that, I like that enhanced photojournalism, but going back to doing the cap and gown shots, like having to cycle through that many people and having that quick attention to detail, I think it's something that, but that's a trained ability that you have going through that. And you're able to look and say, okay, we need to, I can't spend an hour looking at this, but I need to be able to go ready, be ready to go here to kind of make sure everything's in place.
Yeah. It always cracks me up sort of when there's what is it called when they're like an uncle photographer?
Oh, huh?
Another name, Uncle Tom. It's not Uncle Tom.
Uncle Bob or something. Bob,
I rarely have an Uncle Bob, but sometimes I have like an Uncle Bridesmaid Bob, which is fine. But like, it's just funny to me sometimes when people are like, I think you need to do a photo here. And they're not always seeing, is the light, is the background, is the girl on her favorite side of her face, is her dress, like there's just so many other things to it too. So I always think that's funny, but I usually just do what they want and then I'll do it my way too.
or they're sitting there looking at their cell phone that's auto exposing, and they're like, how come this can't look good? And you're like, well, because my camera, I can control I can control the exposure and all that. Anything else you want to make sure we touch on here before we get out? I'll throw up your website again here. It's been really fun catching up.
I have two other things. Like another cool thing that I offer that kind of helps, I think, with those guest photos is I actually bring custom business cards, just my business card, but I'll have the couple's engagement photo if I do their engagement on it. And I'll have their wedding website link that I create of their gallery. And so I pass that out to everyone. And a lot of photographers, for some reason, don't allow guests to access those images. But for me, I'm like, I want to be paid for my expertise and my time on the front. And then I want people to share the images. Like, that's my goal. I love it when I see people, random people sharing them. So that couples seem to get really excited about, and it also makes it easy. They don't have to share it with anyone. Everyone has their own access and can download for free. And I am really planning on, I will photograph anywhere. So let that be known. I've photographed in 10 states for weddings, but I do really want to formally expand to Seattle. And that's something I'm kind of working on for 2025. I am going to be there in September on the 3rd and 4th. And I am interested in I have one couple right now that lives up there that is getting married in Portland. And so they sort of started this. And I went to a lot of concerts last summer in Seattle. So I was just up there a lot. And they have the bridal show that you participated in, right? And I participate in that in Portland. And so I just saw that they have one up there. So if any couples listening or that you know or want to refer to want to do a free photo shoot, a couples shoot on September 3rd or 4th, please reach out to me. And they can see all the images. I'm probably going to give maybe like 5 for free. And if they want to pay a little bit more for the rest of them, awesome. But anybody married or not married, so it's fine if like they're already married. And if anybody has a wedding dress, that would be super awesome too. But I'm also open to just engagement sort of couple photos to just expand my portfolio up there, because I definitely have tons of portfolio images, but not in Seattle. So that would be cool.
Well, we'll build it out. And then Hoddick Photography everywhere, where they have people go?
Yep, it's Hoddick Photography. The website's just hoddick.com. So super easy.
Well, Kayley, it's been so great catching up. We need to get a wedding together again here, because Andrea and Gus still know them, and they've had babies now and everything else. And I think she's a real estate agent, so it's exciting. I appreciate it. If you're interested in coming on the podcast, bestmadevideos.com/podcast guest, and I will play the music and get out of here. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Reed. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.